Sagamadhanisa Sanidamagasa. Welcome to another episode of Ragayathra. In the last session, we learned what is Carnatic music and how was it developed. I just gave a brief introduction to Carnatic music. We will continue that journey and I'll try to answer more of it. But let's try to understand what is frequency, scale, pitch, and note. I'm not going to bore you with so much physics and technicalities, but I wanted to give you in simple terms what each term means so that you get a better grasp of the music theory and so that we can build on top of it. To demonstrate each thing, I have taken a cardboard box and some elastic bands and I've wrapped them around it. And as you understand, sound energy is nothing but vibration in any medium, say it air or water or anything. So to demonstrate what is frequency, scale, pitch, and everything, so I'm going to use this cardboard piece of cardboard, and I have 4 elastic strings of various sizes, so the elasticity differs. And if you understand, when I pluck this string, it's going to vibrate in air and it's going to make a sound. So that's how sound energy is produced, right? So sound energy is nothing but vibration in an air column. And as you see, each vibration is slightly different in tone. So I can pluck it again and you can see it. So the number of vibrations that a elastic band makes and the sound is produced because of that, the number of vibrations is called frequency. And if you see, the larger the wave that it makes is smaller frequency it is. That is small number of times it is going to vibrate. And smaller the wavelength, larger the frequency. So in physics we say wavelength is indirectly proportional to frequency. So as you can see, so this is what frequency is. And when people found out each string, and if I actually hold this to create to reduce the length of the string, it's going to produce a different sound than the original sound. So if you see, each position is producing a different sound. So that's how sound is made. And as you understand, there are certain positions where I struck to produce each different sound. And each position to produce a different frequency is called a pitch position. So that is a pitch. And as people found out, there is a starting frequency. And as you move along in a string, there is a point in which when the frequency doubles, it is going to repeat again. And then there is a cycle and there is a mathematical progression that happens. It's actually called a harmonic progression. I don't want to get into maths again, but still. There's a first fundamental frequency, the frequency that we start, and there is a range of pitch positions that it goes through, and then the frequency repeats again. So that is called an octave. As I mentioned in the last session, an octave is there is a starting frequency and then there is double the frequency, and that range is called an octave. And in octave, we have different pitch positions. As you saw, we can pluck the string by applying tension on each point along the string. And so you might ask me, okay, so there might be many pitch positions, right? I mean, we can just put like even a centimeter or an inch into each point in the string, and then you can produce many pitch positions. Yes, that is true. But you know what? People in the past, like even Western music theory and Indian music, say Carnatic or Hindustani, people in the past have tried to identify different pitch positions with an octave. And it is said that there are cycles of 108 pitch positions, 96 positions, 92 positions, etc. There are many variations to it. But sage Bharata in his Natya Shastra said that human ear can easily decipher 22 pitch positions. Thus he defined a scale or an octave is said to have 22 pitch positions. And if you remember in the last talk, I gave you that in an octave, we try to identify 7 notes. And what is the significance of 7 notes? So if you, the maximum number of notes that you can take from the 22 pitch position so that it is distinct and it is contrast to each other and there is a well-defined frequency gap, we can only comfortably take 7 pitch positions out of the 22 pitch positions to form a full scale. So that is called a scale. A scale is nothing but identified 7 pitch positions in a set of pitch positions that we have. So there can be a numerous amount of scales that we develop, right? Because we can out of 22 in permutations and combinations we have studied, 22C7 is selecting 7 things out of 22 things. So there are many possibilities, but still, what defines music? So music is something out of the 7 pitch positions that you took, only certain combinations may sound euphonic. Euphonic means melodious. So too close the frequency, it is too hard to identify. So there should be a certain interval in which you have to take the 7 notes out of the 22 pitch positions. So one should understand that the concept of frequency and pitch are little different, because frequency is something that can be measured and pitch is a psychoacoustical attribute of sound, meaning people can perceive pitches, but it's just in response to the frequency of the sound that is made. So they can identify higher pitches and lower pitches, but it needs fine tuning of your ear to identify which pitch position is being played. So we just saw that there are 22 pitch positions in Carnatic music. And so we understood what frequency is, what pitch position is, what is an octave. Moving on to the notes and a scale. So we learned in the last session that there are 7 notes in an octave, and we repeat the first note, so thus there are 8 notes. So how did we end up with 7? So 7 notes or 7 pitch positions that we select out of the 22 pitch positions are the comfortable pitch positions that human ear can easily identify, and they have a very good frequency range between each pitch, so that it forms a musical scale, so that each tone is different. Thus, if you see, usually 7 notes are selected to form a full scale within an octave. And adding the first note again, there are 8 notes. So, and this is what is called a scale. So scale is just a progression of starting frequency and moving towards the end of the octave. And so we repeat the first note, which is double the frequency, and thus complete the octave. So we identify 7 pitch positions out of the 22 pitch positions for any scale. So, and that is called a melodic scale. And Western music theory has its own set of scales. Carnatic music has its own set of scales, and Hindustani also has its own set of scales. So the notes are called swara in Carnatic music. Swara comes from the word sur or swara, that can be heard. So, sound in Carnatic music is called nadam, or in Sanskrit it is called nadam. And the scale in Carnatic music is called a murchana. So murchana is just a sharpening of the frequency range, so that you traverse through a starting frequency and then you progress towards the sharpening of that frequency towards the end. So those are some of the terms that you should understand as we move along. And so there is swaram or note, there is pitch position or shruti, and the first fundamental frequency or the first fundamental pitch, the starting pitch is called adhara shruti. Adhara means reference in Sanskrit, and adhara shruti means the starting shruti, and we end with the double the frequency there. So there are different shruti values in the octave that we identify. So 7 notes, as I said, form a scale, and this scale in simple terms is called a ragam. So a ragam is identified, or the physical attributes that you can hear of a ragam are just the notes. So we give life to the notes in a certain fashion, and we sing the notes in a certain fashion. We operate on that set of notes that we are given out of the 22 pitch positions to form a melodic structure or a concept called a raga. So as I explained earlier, ragam is something that invokes emotion, right? So how do we invoke emotion? So it has to have a melodic structure or certain musical phrase. So a series of sounds combining all this produce a raga. So to wind up this session, I'm gonna demonstrate again using the keyboard in this case. And as you can see, keyboard is an instrument where we have fixed notes. And if you see here, this is just a fixed note structure, and it doesn't have the 22 pitch positions because it is already fixed. So we are gonna just, instead of plucking the string, this is just gonna produce one note. And if you see, when it reaches the end of the octave, the frequency just doubled. So this is an instrument where the pitch positions are defined and the interval is already set. So we can't play with it to produce intermediate pitch positions. But a string instrument like violin or an air instrument like a flute can produce intermediate frequencies or semitones that we call. So it is more, which adheres more to Carnatic concepts of called a ragam, because ragam traverses through a set of frequencies than operating on a very fixed frequency, which gives emotions. Because Indian dramaturgy relies more on emotions. Like I mentioned, there are 9 emotions, 9 primary emotions, and these emotions can be beautifully portrayed if you traverse through a set of frequencies and if you emphasize certain note the way in which we sing. So with that, I'll conclude this session, and I'll talk more about excuse me, Carnatic music and more of it later. Thank you.